I get it. You've spent hours watching build videos, reading forum threads, and scrolling through endless listings, and now the biggest question is whether you're about to throw good money down on a rail that will actually move your machine the way you need it to. You don't want to end up with a component that flexes under load, squeaks every time the axis runs, or forces you to redesign your whole frame because it simply isn't up to the task. That hesitation is real, especially when you're piecing together a CNC router or a large-format 3D printer where the linear motion system is the backbone of every cut or layer. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started looking for a rail that could handle a 350mm travel range without turning my garage into a workshop for constant realignments, I kept hitting the same pain points: cheap slides that sag under the weight of a hefty gantry, rails that need a machinist's level of precision just to get a smooth glide, and locking mechanisms that either don't lock hard enough or are a nightmare to disengage. The heavy-duty 1060-inch linear motion slide rail promises to solve those problems by offering a premium drawer-slide feel, a robust 250 pounds load rating, and a galvanized blue zinc finish that claims to resist corrosion. Those sound like the kind of practical details you want to see, because they map directly onto the everyday frustrations of building or upgrading a motion system. First off, the load capacity. A 250 pounds rating is generous for most hobbyist CNC routers and even for the larger bed carriers you find on some high-end 3D printers. In practice, that means you can mount a fairly heavy Z-axis gantry. Think a steel extrusion frame with a dual motor setup without worrying that the rail will start to bow after a few minutes of operation. I've seen people try to run a 150 pounds carriage on a rail rated for just 80 pounds and end up with a wobble that ruins surface finish. With this rail, the margin is there, which translates into smoother cuts and fewer missed steps in a printer. The premium drawer slide claim isn't just marketing fluff. The slide's design uses a ball-bearing carriage that rolls inside the rail, offering a low-friction path that feels almost like a kitchen drawer opening with a gentle push. In real-world use, that low resistance can shave seconds off each axis move, and more importantly, reduces the motor torque you need to maintain speed. On a CNC router that's cutting dense hardwood, that saved torque can mean the difference between a motor stalling on a deep cut or staying steady enough to finish the job cleanly. For a 3D printer, especially when you're printing at higher speeds, that smooth glide helps keep layer lines tight and reduces ghosting artifacts. Installation is where a lot of heavy-duty parts stumble. The rail comes with snap-in buckles that click into place without the need for a bunch of screws or alignment jigs. In my own build, I was able to slide the rail into the mounting brackets, snap the buckles, and then tighten a few set screws to lock everything down. It saved me roughly an hour compared to a rail that required drilling pilot holes, inserting nuts, and then painstakingly checking for parallelism. The locking mechanism is also worth mentioning. A simple lever locks the carriage in place when you need to calibrate or service the machine, and releases cleanly when you're ready to run. It's not a high-tech magnetic brake, but for a hobbyist setup it's a reliable way to prevent drift during zeroing without adding a lot of extra parts. Now, let's talk about the finish. The rail is coated in a galvanized blue zinc plating, which is a decent compromise between corrosion resistance and aesthetic appeal. In a dusty workshop or a garage where humidity can fluctuate, that plating helps keep rust at bay, something you definitely notice if you've ever watched a cheap steel rail develop orange spots after a few months of use. The blue color also makes it easier to spot any debris or wear patterns during routine maintenance, which is a small but handy visual cue. But no product is without trade-offs. First, the brand is generic, and that means you don't get the same level of community support you might find with a well-known linear rail manufacturer. If you run into an issue where the carriage doesn't roll as smoothly as expected, there isn't a dedicated forum or a quick response technical line you can call. You'll be relying on the Amazon Q&A or the sparse documentation that comes with the rail. For most people, that's not a deal-breaker, but if you're a beginner who prefers step-by-step guides from a brand that offers extensive documentation, you might feel a bit left in the dark. Another practical weakness is the tolerance on the rail's straightness. Because the rail is a straight extrusion that's cut from a larger stock, there can be slight variations along its length. In a small 200mm printer, you might not notice it, but on a full-size CNC router where the